The influence of black British music on the pop scene and the global mainstream goes without question. From the sounds of the first generation of black British youngsters in the 60s and 70s to today's hitmakers. Each musical era has brought something fresh and unique to the cultural landscape across the world. I'm Trevor Nelson, and on this show, we'll be looking at the huge impact of black British music throughout the ages, hearing from those who led the charge and made the UK, and in particular, its black music, one of the culture centerpieces of the world. One of the main marker points for black British culture came in 1948 when the Empire Windrush sailed from the Caribbean with many young men and women who were determined to create a better life for themselves in England. This move continued for many years to follow as the new incumbents tried to rebuild Britain after the Second World War. The residents now started to build families in the UK, and so the first generation of black British youngsters came to be. Many of the young children forged a new and exciting culture, one which saw them integrating the sound of their heritage with their everyday British experience. This was prevalent across the country, and the divisions between their experiences and their cultural heritage saw them navigate uncharted waters, with many unanswered questions. You were black, but you were British. You listened to music from your mother country, but you were also surrounded by pop music everywhere. This wasn't easy, and when you throw the overarching influence of American music into the pot, you can see the challenges that they faced. Mid-70s saw a UK take on American R&B and funk. The likes of Central Line, High Tension and Heatwave took their sound and added in a bit of the British flavour. And although they were lauded on the underground scene, they had moderate mainstream success. In the late 70s, the sound of reggae and rebellion, the sound of Jamaica, was often teamed up with the sound of counterculture Britain, punk, most famously represented by Bob Marley's punky reggae party and the influence of reggae on seminal bands such as The Clash. However, as well as these collaborations, there was a new subgenre emerging, a slower take on the reggae that had been coming out of Jamaica. This oozed class and sensuality. It was called Lovers Rock.
Hi, I'm Carol Thompson. I'm a singer, songwriter and producer, and affectionately dubbed the Queen of Lovers Rock. The impact of Lovers Rock on the UK music scene was amazing. It was a time of great expression. It was the first time that the British-born here in the UK to the Windrush generation could express themselves and create something that was authentically their own sound. And it gave great opportunities for creation and freedoms for musicians, singers, songwriters, producers, label owners to just put music out without any interference of any market forces. It was just very authentic. I think what makes UK Lovers Rock British is because I think that generation that were creating the music was squashed or sort of juxtaposed and squashed like a diamond, crushed like a diamond with all these different types of musical influences, you know, from Michael Jackson through to Bread and the Eagles, through to Elton John, through to, I don't know, Earth, Wind and Fire. Then you might have something like Shawaddy Waddy. Then you'd be listening to all types of music, Donna Summer, Diana Ross. It was an amazing time, and because radio stations played everything back to back, from Cliff Richard and then to Johnny Nash, there was no sort of demarcation. A good song was a good song, and good music was good music. So we'd have music from the Caribbean, from Jamaica and Trinidad, soca, calypso, reggae, blue beat, rocksteady at home, and even jazz and country and western at home as well. And as I said before, it was all of these musical forms it was a juxtaposition of all of those things. So we had all of those influences, and it was inevitable that by absorbing all of that on a daily basis through radio stations and at home, that it would somehow, you hear it in the music, you'd hear it in the expression, and that is why Lovers Rock is quintessentially a British sound.
Lovers Rock offered something which was uniquely black, made by UK artists for UK audiences, and it wasn't long until the Jamaican acts came calling for some of the Lovers Rock action. The word also started to spread further and wider. A young schoolgirl teamed up with producer Dennis Bavell to create a track called Silly Games, which took the UK by storm. Sweet, soft melodies with a high-pitched voice and signature falsetto as the song reached a crescendo. The singer behind the track, Janet Kay. She tells of the effect the success of the track, which actually got to number 2 in the national charts, had on her personally.
I'd gone on holiday with my school friends. It was like my first holiday. I got a call saying I had to come back. I was like, what do you mean I've got to come back? I've just got my first passport, my first holiday. You tell me I've got to come back? Why? Because your tune is climbing up the charts and they need you to go on Top of the Pops. I was a Top of the Pops fan. It was scary at the same time because unlike people that had record deals maybe, that were groomed, that went to these drama schools and had singing lessons, I didn't have any of that. I didn't have any kind of grooming. I didn't know what to expect. Doing interviews, I didn't know how to present myself. It was kind of a scary time, but I just had to go with it.
So while we were exporting Lovers Rock to the mainstream, there was an artist who grew up in a sound system culture, and his unique style saw him become the first black British artist to have a number 1 in Jamaica. Papa Levi cut his musical teeth in the dance halls of the UK, and here he is explaining his style.
My style as an MC would be dancehall, niceness and reality. When we get renowned for was the speed rap, the fast style of chat. That is where kinda, boss it. Back then, we did listen to yard tape, regular. One of the biggest influences in that era was man like Papa San, because them a lyrics bantan, you know what I mean? So it's like that thing where the fact say where we are do from over here, so did that influence over there, so it shows we have an impact.
Whilst most of the roots of reggae and Lovers Rock tracks being created in the UK could be traced back to Jamaica, the 80s and 90s brought about a change of tact. At the forefront of this was Soul to Soul and their frontman, Jazzy B.
The Soul to Soul sound was really derived from my sound system, playing my sound each and every week in, week out. Just got to that point where after digging in the crates for so long, and being influenced by so much different music, it's just an eclectic mix of everything that I'm into, really. I'm a melody person. I'm into the structure of a song and melody. So there were so many people from the Americas that I was influenced by, as well as local bands in the UK like your Cy Mondays and FBI and people like that, Incognito, and obviously when Narada Michael Walden came in with the production on Loose Ends, I mean, yeah, that helped quite a lot, because the sound up until then wasn't necessarily defined. And I'm not into categorizing things, but I guess it makes it easier to explain. But there was a time when we were bombarded with a particular type of music, and I guess, in the late 80s, Soul to Soul came along and was adapted by people who enjoyed that new, fresh sound, I guess. Once something crosses over, it's pop. So whether it's Sugar Minott, whether Boney M, Bob Marley, Joan Armatrading, once it crosses over, it becomes popular, and that's the idea of pop. And yeah, I knew it was going to happen. That's why we called the album Club Classics Volume 1. It had all the elements, and I guess equally the timing of it was pretty direct as well. So I'm only looking back now and reflecting on some of the things what you're asking, but I can say with a stiff upper lip, yeah, it's a guano out there.
They took the core fundamentals of a reggae sound system and threw in just about every other style he liked and appreciated. From R&B to funk, elements of jazz, spoken word and hip-hop, the Soul to Soul beat was distinctive. It was built for the clubs and raving, but sounded just as fresh and sweet on the radio as well. They became icons of the British scene with a string of hits both here and across Europe, countless awards, and maybe more importantly, the love of the people. Jazzy B.
I wasn't searching for anything, so it was never about us being mainstream or anything like that. The music just comes from a humble place, and I guess people, you know, humbly enjoy it, and that's all I could really ask for, you know.
They were onto a winner without doubt. The sound of that period came from soul to soul. Just like Papa Levi did with his MC style, Jazzy reinvented the sound of R&B, made it uniquely from the UK and exported it to all corners of the world, particularly the States, where the sound influenced a young producer who went on to create some modern day classics from the likes of Amy Winehouse and the Fugees.
Peace, this is Salam Raimi. And really what I have to say about Black British music, you know, the first things I would have seen from myself personally would have been in the 80s. You know, I always looked at Billy Ocean's Caribbean Queen and knew it came from somewhere. Later on I found out it was kind of a UK-based, you know, production. But really it kicked in with Soul to Soul and Loose Ends for me. Those two groups really made a big difference. Loose Ends was just right on top of that 808 bop, still with their own flavor of vocal textures and the way that they would approach melodies and the drive and bass lines. But then also Soul to Soul broke it in, you know, putting the loops underneath the actual music. Fair Play was there, but I didn't really hear that first. I heard Keep On Moving, The Yellow Is the Color of Sun Rays, Karen Wheeler's vocals, on top of the Biz Markie Pickin' Boogers beat, you know, layered with the 909 and 808s. But it just really made a big difference. And the dun, 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 dun lasted all the way into the 90s. And almost all Uptown and Bad Boy productions, they would have that string turnaround going into or coming out of the rap or coming in and out of verses. So I think Keep On Moving by Soul to Soul ended up being a big blueprint. And of course, Back to Life. But then even more so, the Funky Dreads aspect of it, you know, and their merch and the way that their impressions really turned on. People that had dreads saying, wait a minute, I don't just have to have locks. I could turn around, curl them up, flip them. You know, what Karen did with her hair, but then what Jazzy and the rest of the crew did with their stuff too. It really made a big difference. So I felt like that was really there. And, you know, the reason why it probably resonated is because it had the Caribbean undertones along with the Barry White level of strings and still with the hip-hop beats. So it was like the cross-section of soul, reggae, and hip-hop all at one time, which I feel like the UK is kind of held together in many different ways. And all the way to my work like with Miss Dynamite, you know, the thing is people know Dynamite, but they don't realize that that was the Studio One reggae sample. And, you know, that was really a big deal for me because it was being able to take something that was so classic 60s Studio One. It's almost like the sample came on a Windrush and landed in her nan's house. And then what ended up coming out of it was, you know, something that became another mode. But Black British music's definitely been impacting me. And the reality is that the British music culture and the black culture also affected all the way to Amy Winehouse. Because what she was actually doing was ultimately black music, but she grew up in London.
As well as Amy Winehouse and Miss Dynamite reinvigorating the UK sound, there were others who were having international success. Maxi Priest adapted the soul to soul sound and became the first black British artist to have a Billboard #1 with Close to You. It was reggae, it was soul, and it was funky and unique. Maxi describes why he never wanted to be pigeonholed and welcomed the success and influence around the world.
From day one, I've always had a sense of variety. I've always wanted to play or create music with diversity. For me, the most important part of it is the art. You know, I've been blessed to be able to sing, and there's no reason for me wanting to pigeonhole that beautiful talent that has been gifted to me. There's no reason for me wanting to pigeonhole that in any particular genre. It's an art that is dear to me. It's a spiritual connection that I have. Growing up in England is such a massive melting pot of music. I've been listening to R&B, rock, pop, jazz, all these different genres of music because of my appreciation of the art. you know, and my love for good lyrics and expressing the meaning and feeling.
Gaining the respect of your fellow musicians, particularly overseas, is the ultimate accolade. Here's jazz soul pioneer Omar.
I was received very, very well in the States, in the US, because they were listening to people like Young Disciples, Incognito, Galliano, already Loose Ends, Soul to Soul. So I was kind of like that wave of English music that was traveling over there. I'd say that our music is very influential over there because we were making music that influenced us. That was from the States, and we kind of like regurgitated that back and gave them that retro style, but with the English twist, the UK twist that can only come from there, you know?
Back in the UK, the home of the next wave to hit the world was cooking underground. Drum and bass and jungle took the big rolling bass lines from reggae, added in elements of dance music and some memorable samples, and created something which could only originate out of Britain. Here is one of the leading pioneers of the jungle and drum and bass scene, DJ Fabio.
Drum and bass influenced the mainstream because it was British music. And that's really important. Since punk music in the late 70s, there was nothing that was kind of like, you know, British. And, you know, so it was really important for... Everything was imported. Funk was imported, hip-hop was imported. This was something that we made from reggae and influences of us growing up, soul, R&B. So it was a massive thing. We had no idea it was influencing culture because we were young. And you know, when you're young, you're just carefree. And we was just doing the thing and we was experimenting. And you know what, to be honest with you, we had a chance to experiment. I think nowadays people are a lot more rigid about experimentation, but we were given the chance to create something new, which was really important. And I think now that's why it's so difficult to break through with anything new, because people don't take that risk anymore. And we took risks, and it paid. That's how drum and bass was born, because we was mixing techno with breakbeats and, you know, techno with hip hop, something we grew up with, and that was the foundation of this thing, man. When I saw Ronnie Size win the Mercury Music Award, it was a proud moment, because I was sitting down watching the telly, and I think they was up against Spice Girls, Spice World album. I was like, there's no way. And when they said Ronnie Size, New Forms, mate, it was a light bulb moment. It was a moment that we knew that this ish was serious, and it had landed, and it was a big thing. And Goldie as well. I mean, Goldie, his Timeless album was just up there with one. It's not only drum and bass, up there with one of the great albums of the 90s.
Staying true to the scene you came from was obviously important, and the major labels started to see the value in the black British music audiences. From remixes to specialist black music divisions, the shape of the music industry was changing.
That's where I think in the 90s it all went wrong, because a lot of people got signed and they tried to break drum and bass down into like a commercial thing, and it just won't work. You know, they were finding people, they were hiring people like Fotech, they were signing him. There's no way Fotech could ever do commercial. And they made the mistake of, you know, signing underground acts. And that's why when they kind of like, when Garage came along, Garage was a lot easier to sell to the people. Drum and bass was a lot more difficult. But now, drum and bass is a commercial commodity now. And they found a way of making drum and bass commercial. But you know what? We're still underground, bro. And we're still flying the flag for the underground. You know, that commercial thing's great for opening doors, but ain't something I'm going to do.
By the turn of the century, the sound of the street became the sound of the charts. Far from just trying to borrow a slice of the culture, it was now the case that black music culture was the main meal. And nowhere was this better demonstrated than in the world of UK garage. DJ Bushkin from the Heartless Crew.
Yeah, man, it was such a good feeling, man. It just felt great knowing that the thing that we started doing and we was doing for absolute nothing, for free, just for fun and enjoyment, was now getting noticed around the place. And yeah, big checks were getting signed and people were on TV and stuff like that. And yeah, man, it felt great, man. It was a euphoria feeling in itself. Yeah, initially when we was playing in the underground raves and all the parties, we wasn't so aware of the impact garage was having on the wider audience and definitely the pop scene. But I remember I remember it coming to light when the Soul Solid crew were at the Brits, and that was a massive thing. And then I think they got into a little beef with another boy band, and it was global. It was all over the TV and in the newspapers. And we was like, wow, yeah, this is really happening. Like, this is a thing. And I mean, yeah, definitely for ourselves, Heartless Crew, we when we kind of realised the impact internally, we were asked to jump on a Sean Paul remix, and we was like, yeah, of course. But that just showed us kind of like how big garage was and the impact of the music, basically, that Sean Paul and his team had kind of reached out to us, knowing what we was doing over here and how we was shelling down the raves, and they're like, yo, we need a Heartless Crew remix.
Hi, this is DJ Spoonie, representing the Dream Team and UK Garage, of course. Whether it was Artful Dodger or MJ Cole at one end of the scene, Wookie, the Dream Team, So Solid Crew, Heartless Crew, right across the board, whether it be really musical garage or MC-led UK garage, it was everywhere in every club. The remixes were coming in thick and fast right across the scene, whether that be the All Saints, whether that be the Spice Girls. We even know Victoria Beckham quite famously collaborated with Omar from RIP Ice Cream Records. So I guess if you were an A&R or in charge of a record label at the time and you wanted to have a track that was played on the streets or in the clubs, you absolutely would try and get either a UK garage producer or to get it to at least have a UK garage remix. The thing about UK garage and its acceptance, I think, largely came from the fact that it was quite unapologetically UK garage. It was just itself, and it wasn't reliant on lots of money being invested. It was from the streets, it was for us, by us, and there was something very honest and unique about that. So for that reason, I think that when records started to chart, they were charting because they were just loved by everybody, not necessarily because lots of money was pumped behind the big acts. And for that reason, it just caught fire and people really trusted and believed in it. I mean, the thing was, even though we were never motivated by the status and the awards, I suppose that the recognition when you see records at the top of the charts means that people are really liking and enjoying what you're doing. But once the playing field was level and we were given access to radio shows and TV shows, and you know, the music was regularly played on programs like Coronation Street and EastEnders, that it was only going to be a matter of time before these records were going to number one. You know, and the scene, the genres had lots of number ones, and I mean, the amount of top tens it has been phenomenal, considering the little amount of money that was invested into the scene.
Harvey from So Solid.
So Solid, we was always a group that was never going to compromise our style, but I don't even think we was thinking about compromising. It was an organic sound from Battersea that came from us, inbuilt in the streets of Clapham Junction, Battersea. So we didn't really feel like we was compromising, even when we, you know, got to radio level, when radio was doing edits. You know, people wasn't asking us to change lyrics, maybe a few swear words cut out, but we wasn't going to compromise who we were just to fit in, because we're not a pop band. We were just making music, and obviously the influence was vital, because at that time, you know, you couldn't see people of colour that you could relate to on TV at that time. There was a lot of pop acts. And so for us to come through and break through into the national charts and get a number one, I think that states the influence that we had.
Beatmakers were also very important in translating the sound of the streets into something with mass appeal. This is award-winning producer Rodney Jerkins, who explains how the garage sound sold millions for him and Destiny's Child after a trip to the UK.
I was in London And I was working on another great song called Holla Holla with Spice Girls. And before I left London, Spice Girls took me to a club. And I went to this club and I heard a sound that I'd never heard before in the States. It was like a garage two-step rhythm. I asked the DJ if he could make me a CD, and he made me a CD, and I studied that sound all the way back to the States. My first session back in the States was with Destiny's Child. When I got back to the States to work with Destiny's Child, I played this beat and they hated it, but I knew the song was great. We get to the mix session and my engineer is getting ready to mix it, and I walk in the studio and I listen to it after living with it for like 2 weeks, and I said, this track sucks. He turned around and said, what? I said, now I know what they're talking about. It's terrible. I was like, get rid of everything. All I want to hear is their vocals. And I started from scratch and I redid the track, and that became a 9 million seller. My first Grammy. It's probably arguably one of the biggest songs of not only my career, but their career as well. Just the greatest love story ever.
Soulful Garage had morphed into the MC-led style, and while the beats got harder, the demand also increased. One of the most seminal moments in black British music was a young MC from Bow in East London winning the coveted Mercury Music Prize with his raw and undiluted album, Boy in the Corner.
My name is Dizzy Rascal, rapper, producer, MC. Well, I was making music in school, from like secondary school. Managed to get myself onto pirate radio through DJing, drum and bass at the time. Then I started MCing a bit, and then from there I started making beats, made a few tunes. One that really took off and got a lot of attention was a song called I Love You that came out and created a big buzz. Then I went on to make an album which was called Boy in the Corner, and that took me around the world basically. That first started by taking me to America, and then from there all around Europe, Australia, South America. That was like the main spots. British music impact around the world has always been huge. Even if you take away, even if we look outside of grime or rap or whatever, like British artists have always done well in whether it's the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, or like, and then even Americans breaking American artists, like they usually bring them to the UK to break them. Everything from, I remember Backstreet Boys to Destiny's Child, like had to come and be broken here. To Bob Marley, who's obviously not American, but so Britain has always had has always been a serious place for music.
Grime had well and truly arrived. Producer Fraser T. Smith, who's worked on a number of grime tracks over the years, has created a safe space for grime artists to make music and is careful to not claim any credit for the genre while crediting the pioneers.
There are a lot of obviously incredible people that have started the scene, and that I wouldn't want it to feel like I'm the lucky one that people come to. I mean, I have a thing that I do, which I guess is ostensibly use my background of everything that I've learned from recording traditional instruments, which is, there's millions of people on the planet that do that like way better than me. But with my, I guess, love of hip hop and garage and grime and all these different genres, I understand the genre enough to be able to, again, like be of service, so that I can put a piano on which doesn't sound, I mean, I'm not even saying that I'm in any way like reinventing the wheel, but I think that I did, and not even knowingly, but I made this little sort of thing for myself where artists could come, they could feel very safe in terms of creating.
With the impact of grime being felt everywhere in UK popular culture, one of its mainstays was Skepta. He says the Boy Better Know collective, alongside their peers, have helped push their genre forward.
Me as a rapper, I try reach out to everyone, so I try to maintain a good balance. At the same time, like somebody who might like, I don't know, Rolex sweep or sunglasses at night might not like the other stuff that I talk about. I try and put every emotion that I feel on different tracks. If someone gives me a beat and I feel like, yeah, this track is telling me to do this, I'll go on a track and do that. So it's like, I wouldn't say that we're totally responsible. I would say that we help. It's just a lot of rappers try and only show one side of themselves to their audience, and I just try to be like, I just let everyone just know I am fun, happy, sad, angry, everything.
And it isn't just music. The fashion conscious have always looked towards the UK black music style for the next big thing. Whether it be the sharp styles of the soul boys in the 70s or the streetwear of the drill artists of the 21st century, what happens in the UK on the streets now will appear on a catwalk near you very soon. One of the biggest success stories at the moment is Stormzy, a man who has achieved iconic status through music and so much more. He's gone from underground MC to international superstar, with one of the pinnacles of his career being a headliner at Glastonbury as the first black British male to do so. He understands the value of what is brought from black British music to the cultures of the world.
I really embody everything that I love. If I named 3 or 4 artists, I'll be lying. Like, it's everything from Stevie to Frank to Wretch to Kendrick to Kanye to like in its entirety, as in like, yeah, I think musically it's just, I just love music. I'm a music man to the T. I love music and I want to dabble in music, but I was like, I get it. What I represent and what people think I'm doing and the spirit in which people think I'm doing things, it's not that. I always looked at like how people viewed, remember there was the era of like, of the grime MCs making their pop attempts, yeah? Right. And I always felt like, it's interesting people's relationship with that and a relationship with me doing a shut up or a Blinded by Your Grace. And I said, so is Blinded by Your Grace the hill that we die on? Is that the thing where it's like, my man's just, and I said, Blinded by Your Grace Part 2, or me doing a cold rhythm with Little Mix. I said, and I just clocked, it's interesting people's relationship with things, because I said, there was a time when I was coming up and I saw all the grime MCs make pop attempts. And I understood it, because I understood it, and I'm never here to sit here and say like, I stand on their shoulders in terms of they had to do things to allow me to exist, innit? And I saw them, and they had their attempts at success, and they went for it. And then I thought to myself, I'm not even having an attempt at success, but I think because it's really successful, it's people's relationship with it. It's a strange thing, and these are things that I've had to grow to understand, and with growth as well, and God, in terms of like just making me a better man. Like I'm like, okay, I understand you.
The UK has proved a cultural centre point for the global growth of Afrobeats and has seen unprecedented mainstream growth in the genre. From an official UK chart to stadium shows from the likes of Burna Boy and Wizkid here in the UK. The specialist genre, which often has lyrics in African mother tongue, has impacted onto the charts and mainstream big time, from beats to stylistically. Even the likes of pop royalties such as Ed Sheeran and Selena Gomez have jumped onto Afrobeats remixes recently. In 2018, there was a song that introduced a lot of the mainstream, both here and in America, to the sound of Afrobeats, and it came from these shores. Producers Team Salute.
Joanna came about, we was in a session with Afrobeat working on this mixtape, and we needed one more song, but we wanted to keep it native. So we came up with Joanna, we got the melodies, he came up with the vocal ideas, and we just made sure that it reflected where we're coming from West Africa. When we made Joanna, we knew it was a banger. We had an idea where we was going with it, but when we heard it, it was like, nah, this is a banger, this is it. It was different from what we was doing with the Afro swing stuff, and we just knew that this was going to translate well. Joanna had a big cultural relevance. It opened a lot of doors and understanding about Afrobeats. Up until then, people didn't really have songs to really connect with, language-wise. So us keeping it very, very, very easy to listen to and follow, tempo was very easy too. It made it easy for people in America and Europe to connect with the song. It opened a lot of doors.
The world's biggest rapper, Drake, loves the UK sound. He's a regular collaborator with artists from Britain, most recently J Hus and Central C, but also had a global #1 sampling Kyla's Do You Mind, which was made by production outfit Crazy Cousins. Here they explain how they found out their song had been used by Drake.
I found out through Kyla's management, and they were like, "You've been sampled by a superstar." I was like, whatever.
what are you talking about? No chance. I was like, who's it? They're like, who do you think? Nicki Minaj came to my head for some reason, and then I thought it's weird because they were in the same camp. Something was just ringing in my head. This is something about Young Money here. They told us it was Drake. I was like, oh my god, and I had to just digest it for a second. Whoa, let me just take some time now. And then we couldn't even hear the track because a lot of his stuff gets leaked, and I think they might have even heard like a snippet over the phone, and that was all they were getting. I didn't even hear it.
UK Drill's Central C is on a wave right now. He's the talk of America, and his uniquely British style has captured the imagination of some of the world's biggest artists, including Drake, who collaborated with him on a freestyle. While his style is very much based in the UK, it's not only influencing stateside rappers, but he sees himself as setting the blueprint for the next generation of British artists.
I definitely analyse the game a lot. I see what people do right and what people do wrong, and I take it and do my own thing with it. It's weird, it's like a mixture of watching other people's thing and then just not watching it as well. I don't really watch no one's thing in a sense where like, I don't really aspire to, a lot of people would always ask, like when I'm going into some of these meetings back in London, they'd be saying to me like, what kind of trajectory do you want to go in, like who's a blueprint like another artist or whatever. I could never answer that question. Like, there's no other artist that would really like aspire to go down the same road or really be like. I think seeing is believing though as well. So like what people see, people do, they believe they can do. But if they ain't seen no one do it, then they just believe it's impossible. I never really saw it like that. I just think anything's kind of possible.
So the future looks bright for black British music, and it seems its influence on the mainstream will continue for the time to come. Our last word goes to MC Bushkin from the Heartless Crew.
The reason I think black British music has had such an impact on the wider music scene, in fact the whole world, is because black British music encompasses everything. It takes a little bit of the bashment scene. It's obviously got its own flavours. It's got its pop roots. It's got its classical vibes. You understand? It's got the street culture. It's just got a hype. And I mean, all of those bits and bobs means that it's got something for everyone around the world. Someone is definitely going to like something about the black British music and the culture and the scene. So it's absolutely good, you know.
To check out and discover more stories from Union Black, go to Google Arts and Culture at goo.gle/Union Black. You can share and let me know your thoughts using the hashtag Union Black.